We can have good audio, so we're going to pass it around to each participant. So look, Audrey, I'm going to start with you first, I suppose. Eurodesk. I'm familiar with Eurodesk. I know a lot of people in the room are familiar with Eurodesk, but for those who aren't, can you maybe talk a bit about the work that you guys do?
Okay, so, well, I'm Audrey, and I work at the European level office, so Eurodesk Brussels Link. And Eurodesk is a European youth information network, and our goal is exactly what we were discussing before, is that all young people have access to information, because without information there's no participation, and there's a big gap of information, and that's some of the findings I will share with you.
Yeah, and I know, I suppose, I'm going to jump to it, my second question already, right? I'm going to run through these, because I'm not going to drag on too much, but bridging that gap then, that you've heard the conversation that we had there, Maria, and there was some concerns in the room about, I suppose, the gap that does exist between rural parts of the country or people who are from lesser education backgrounds. And I suppose, what can we do to bridge those gaps? What can we do to make sure that we're not just in that bubble? And I talk about that bubble a lot, and I know people will have been on calls with me where I kind of concerned about the fact that I know I'm in a bubble. I know there's a lot of people in this room who are in the bubble, but how do we get other people into that bubble so that they know what's happening and they can avail of those opportunities?
Yeah. Well, that's the main challenge we have as Eurodesk, because that's our mission, and that's why we were set up in 1990 at the time, because the information is not reaching all young people now, and we see usually it's middle class, very white. It's like a similar profile. So we do every second year we have a survey we launch towards young people about how they access information about mobility opportunities, how do they perceive going abroad as something beneficial for them. And in the last one, again, we saw that those from rural areas, young people who are younger, like those in their teens, and also those with lower educational backgrounds, they have less access to information, but they're also less willing or less seeing mobility as something for them that is beneficial. So there's a double gap. And at the same time, they all, 95% of young people said they would like to see specialized information and support services for helping them build these projects. But those groups, they don't know that those services actually exist. So we see there's a big gap between the demands from young people and the offer, because we have services that are there for helping them and that are targeted at them. That's who we want to reach, but those young people don't necessarily know that we are there. So,
yeah.
So that's So then, to answer the question, then what to do about it? There's one thing, and that was mentioned before, is working with schools, because that's where young people are, and we have all young people, because school is mandatory. So the first thing for us is to see how we can do partnerships with schools and go into the schools to bring the information. And that's why we have developed what we call Euro classes, which are informal workshops that are to be carried out in schools. So we are pushing our national Eurodesk to implement this project, because we think it's very powerful. So that's one thing. And the other one is that we see young people are using more and more, and mainly social media to get informed, which can somehow be worrying, because then they don't necessarily use the official website like ours for getting this information. So then we have to go there. We have to invest social media, we have to be present, and we have to provide information that they can connect to. So that's also something important for us in terms of also skills and developing quality services, that we invest in social media and TikTok or whatever social media they use, and this the way they behave or the way they interact with social media depends also on the age groups, which means that youth information services have to adapt their strategies with targeting different people, also making sure it represents the diversity of the youth groups. So it's a huge challenge, let's say, for us. So I would say these two are important, and it's the digitalization of our services is
and it's
a key issue.
I think the digitalization is probably an important point, is making sure that, I suppose, one of the biggest ways we all have access now, and I say that we all have access to the internet. I know there's parts of rural Ireland that still don't have solid internet. I live in one of them, so I know that that's probably something we take for granted, but I suppose I'm going to stick to the positives, right? I'm going to try to be as positive as I can, because I like being positive and I don't want to make everyone sad on a Tuesday afternoon or morning. So we're going to stick to the positives of all of these things. And one of the huge positives is the European Solidarity Corps, which is something I will honestly say I had never heard of before up until about 10 days ago, okay? And yeah, I know there's a lot of people in the room here who are very disappointed in me. Lorraine, again, give me the eyes back there. I just had no idea about the European Solidarity Corps, but I had great conversations. I had two great conversations with Emer and Marisa about this. And Emer, I suppose you might be able to just, I'm going to pass the microphone down. It's kind of like a pass, yeah, there we go, all the way down. For those people who are like me, I know there's not many of you, I know you all know what ESC is, but for those people who don't necessarily know what ESC is, can you maybe just explain a bit about it? I suppose your experience as well. You're an in-country volunteer, which once again, I was an idiot about. We had a conversation. I actually misunderstood entirely what that was, but a really exciting opportunity nonetheless. So that's a question. I know it doesn't sound like a question, but it is a question. So you could tell us a little bit about ESC.
Yeah, okay. Hello,
Yeah.
can you hear me? The European Solidarity Corps is basically provides opportunities for EU residents between the ages of 18 and 30 to live and work in another EU country or in their own country and to get experience in working with an organisation that benefits the community in some way. So there's opportunities all across Europe and in Ireland. So you can do one in your home country or in another country in the EU. But they last between 2 months and 12 months. And basically there are like opportunities to get experiences to get work experience in organisations that they range from, different work, working with migrants and refugees and asylum seekers, organic farms, promoting sustainable lifestyles and foods, stuff like that, youth clubs, after school, clubs, things like that. So there's lots of different options for people. It's just a great way for young people to get experience in a field that they may not know how to get into, and just to experience living in another EU country as well. And it's funded. That's the important part as well. So they're the free accommodation, food, and personal allowance for people to have to be able to go out at the weekend and stuff like that as well. So it's a great opportunity, I think, for young people.
Funded is a great word. I love it. And every time about EU stuff, it's funded, and I love that idea, And that's important to point out, because I think a lot of people, myself included, are kind of like, it sounds great, but it's a bit heavy in terms of like the money together to really go and experience this. And as I said, we're part-time work, or you mightn't necessarily be in a position where you can afford to do that. But these are funded opportunities. The EU supports young people in all EU member states to go and enjoy these opportunities. And as an in-country volunteer then, so I know, Marisa, you were out of country, so I'll come to you in a second, but as an in-country volunteer, what's that experience like? So what's that involve?
It's great. I'm really enjoying it. It is basically, it's pretty much what you would do in any EU country, except you're doing it at home instead of having to live abroad in another country. So it is a great option for anyone that isn't sure if they are ready to kind of move and up sticks in another totally new country, maybe who doesn't speak, the same language and stuff like that. But it's the same in the sense that you still get the same funding, the same, kind of support. And there is, again, a range of opportunities in Ireland as well in different organisations and things like that. So there's something for everyone, basically. But I would highly recommend it, definitely, for anyone that isn't quite ready yet to kind of go and move somewhere else and live abroad.
Yeah, it's kind of a happy medium in the sense you get the experience. You don't necessarily have to put yourself too far out of not your comfort zone, but I suppose if you're a little cautious about it, it's still a way to engage with it. Marisa and myself had a great conversation last week, and to be honest, I was half tempted to just go and sign up for ESC after the conversation and just forget about all my commitments here. I don't even have the question to spark the response you gave me, but could you just talk about your ESC experience and what you did? And I know it's a very big experience. There's so much to it, so do take your time.
Yeah,
I literally it's really exciting.
I could spend probably the whole day talking about it, but I'll just. So my project was in Santa Maria de Feira. It's a small town close to Porto in northern Portugal, and it was with an NGO called Rostro Solidario, which means Solidarity Face. And basically, I chose the project because I wanted to be immersed in a lot of different activities, so not one specific thing. I wanted to kind of taste a lot of different community development, environmental work, working with young people. So I will tell you, basically I'll tell you a shortened version of what I did. So one of the main projects I was involved in was a community garden. So we basically set up this garden where we grew fruits and vegetables, all organic, and when we harvested those, we gave them to people who availed of our food bank. So that was really important because there was a lot of food insecurity, particularly during the pandemic. So as well as receiving the non-perishable foods that they were receiving from the food bank, we were giving them something that was really like fresh and nutritious to add to that. And for me, that was important because I studied international development and food policy, and that contributed to the Sustainable Development Goal 2, which is zero hunger. So a lot of the work that I did, I try and connect it with something, a bigger mission, I guess you could say. We also created a small business called Novo de Novo, where we upcycle furniture and textiles that I guess otherwise would have ended up in a landfill. And with those products, we whatever we sold went back into the business, and we also gave them to people as part of our resource bank. So families that may need a bed or a chair or clothes, anything that they needed, we would give to them. I was involved in social media, so I documented basically every aspect of the project, and also created content that I hope that was relevant to the followers, related to anything from minimizing food waste to how Portugal is doing in the SDGs, things like that. I tutored a girl with her English lessons, but not just that. I guess I was kind of a support to her because I personally wasn't in education at the time, but I can understand the difficulties of, coping with working, studying virtually, the added pressure of that, in the middle of the pandemic. I facilitated workshops with young people, where we piloted a number of games related to, I guess, citizenship and the EU policies, raising awareness about those. And finally, I volunteered at an animal shelter. So I took care of 220 dogs and 60 cats. So it really was like, that's literally the shortened version of what I did. But I think it highlights just how broad the European Solidarity Corps is.
That was one ESC.
That was just one project. So it really is. It's not, but also it's not just about the activities that you're doing in that project. I have, I guess, a different experience that I went to Portugal. So, part of that experience is immersing yourself in a new country with a different language, with a completely different culture. And, the skills that I learned from Rostro Solidario and the partner organizations were very beneficial to me. But also, I learned so much from just interacting, having debates and discussions with my other fellow volunteers at the kitchen table, because we were from, on my project, there were people from Italy, France. We also had volunteers from Russia, from Turkey. So it really was like a broad spectrum, I guess you could say. So I'll stop talking, but I am very passionate about it, and I think everyone should get the chance to do it.
You all thought I was an idiot, but you see, I told you. I was on my computer Googling ESC and I'm going, can I leave my master's halfway through? The answer is no, they won't give me my money back. So. Look, that's an incredible experience, and it really is. There's not even just, if you did one of those things during that time, I'd be amazed. But to do all of them is just, it's again mind-boggling. Dean, I haven't forgotten about you. I promise. I'm not just leaving you sitting there. Do you want to grab that microphone, Dean? You clarified for me yesterday because once again, a bit of an idiot, but you told me you're Ireland's co-European Youth Forum delegate.
Yeah.
Now, a part of the European Year of Youth, and I suppose connecting with Europe, is sharing that voice and your opinions and your views. It's as important as engaging in the opportunities and experiences. I suppose the question, once again, I'm not really great with questions. I'm kind of just making statements here and looking for responses. But I suppose, one, why are you passionate about, I suppose, sharing your views and opinions in a form like that? And I suppose, what are the benefits, in your opinion, of getting that opportunity? What are you hoping to achieve, and what opportunity do you think you're getting?
So the interest came from sort of being involved at a local level in youth work for so long, and then getting involved with Young Voices with MYCI and having that impact on the national level and meeting with what was DCYA and sort of having that influence on how youth policy could look going forward. And then I had the opportunity of being an EU youth delegate in 2018, and that was part of influencing European policy at a youth conference with delegates from across Europe. So then last year when the Youth Forum opening came up, I applied for it because it adds that other level now of having that impact and bringing the voice of Irish young people and young voices just to another forum and another level, so that Irish young people are being heard on that European stage. And the opportunities are that when myself and Mark go to the meetings, we're bringing the practice of youth work in Ireland to these meetings. And we're going, this is what we're doing in Ireland. This is how we're doing it. And this is what works for us. This is what young people are saying about different topics. So like we were in Luxembourg last year, and for me it was an eye-opener because I've been in youth work so long. I studied youth work, and the definition that some of the other delegates had from their youth councils was very, very different to the definition of youth work we have in Ireland, and for them it wasn't part of the Youth Work Act and stuff. So it was really eye-opening to see that youth work, although we know what it is, when you go across the water into parts of Europe, it's not as structured as it is here, and it's bringing our level of youth work to Europe.
Yeah, and it's great. Your point is a fantastic one, because I know that the quote Amanda Gorman always says, "Your silence speaks for no one." And if you're not going to be willing to stand up and speak up, it's difficult then to make sure that your views and opinions are heard. And I suppose you've seen then firsthand the benefit of connecting with Europe. But what are the benefits, in your opinion, of connecting with Europe? This is what this event is about, so I'm conscious. You can sit up here, right? I'm going to jump down here. Adam, by the way, guys, this is the person who didn't want to join us to start with. What are the benefits of connecting with Europe, in your opinion? It's a question I'm going to ask everybody, but I suppose as somebody who's gone over there and had those conversations, what do you think the real benefits are for other young people here who are thinking, you know what, that's something I want to do, that's something I want to engage in?
I suppose it just brings that experience of seeing how other cultures are in Europe, and it also brings that sense of solidarity. So I'm on a youth committee in my local youth centre at the moment, and because of the crisis in Ukraine, some of the younger members had went, but what can we do now to impact change? And we sort of sat around the table and went, the first thing we can do is we can turn the building blue and yellow, and we can put up flags and posts to show that sense of solidarity. And then we went, but what's a real act we can do to show this is what we want to do? And what that became was, we're taking in donations of sort of the essential items from the community and other community organisations. And what we're doing is we organise them, and we've set up a connection with an organisation who was shipping all these essential items to the border of Poland. So now we went from just, we're going to show solidarity by changing the colour of the building, to let's do a real action. And even like yesterday, I only started the youth work job in Talk About Youth project in St Andrew's Resource Centre, and the young people and youth workers have wanted to show solidarity again, and their form of doing it is going to be a walk to raise awareness in the community of what's happening, but also to have those conversations with young people of all ages, to go and talk about what's happening in Ukraine and how do they feel about it. So when you're exposed to that level of European connection, you begin to feel that solidarity and that oneness with young people across Europe.
Yeah, and it's the youth participation and activism, and I know we've had conversations about this, and Adam, I might pass it to you on this one. I suppose that youth activism and the engagement at a local or national level, how can that inspire more young people, do you think, to get involved at a European level, and I suppose try to impact on what you've spoken about, Dean, obviously, which is hugely important at the moment, given the war in Ukraine. It's incredibly important that we show the support there, and young people are obviously playing a big part in that. But how do we go from the local, national to the European level?
I think for me, it's the aspect of every youth work that happens at a local level, there's really a big connection to the European level, no matter what organisation you're in. There's always some sort of kind of parallel path that other countries are taking, that other youth work organisations are taking. So I think by working together with youth organisations, by having that connection, that interdisciplinary connection, I think you often find parallels that happen at a European level, and it's very easy once you get involved at a local level for that natural progress to get you interested in European initiatives, European projects, because a lot of things that say happen at a local level in Ireland, for example, whether they be local Corlin and Oak things, a lot of the inspiration is taken from that national European level. Those initiatives are shared across many different European states. So I think the importance is connecting with each other and being able to share that knowledge and share that connection with people in other countries and helping them with the same initiatives, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, fantastic. It's a stepping stone, I think,
Exactly,
isn't it? It's a stepping stone for us. Audrey, we had a good conversation about the mobility report. I'm going to get the name of it here, Mobility and the Role of Youth Information. So it's the report that Eurodesk puts together. The third edition is coming out. And I suppose for a lot of people in the room, hearing about all these amazing opportunities and engagements from young people with Europe is important, but I suppose trying to figure out how we can make sure that everybody's getting involved and figuring out where they're getting their information from now and how we can improve that in the future. So in the report, what are people saying, what are young people telling Eurodesk about where they're getting their information from now? If they want to go abroad, get involved in ESC or get involved in any of those amazing experiences that we've heard about?
Okay. Well, we surveyed those who went abroad and those who didn't. So those who didn't, they will search, they said they would search on search engines, on social media, in the schools, and the fourth is their relatives and their peers. And as I said before, only 50% would look at specialized information services. So that's where they would look. So that's where, I mean, as I said, we have to be like, and also being optimized in search engines and stuff like this. And the ones who went abroad, they used our information services. So it means like if they look for us, then they find us. But so the thing is to plant a seed in people's mind that this is also an option for them before they actually have to look for us. So that's a bit the challenge we have. And I think to add to this, like social media, what I said before, I think a good practice is what is happening now, that I feel like I'm the old one now in the panel. And usually, like, as a young professional, I was usually the only woman or the younger one. And now, and I think that's the way, because I think it's more interesting to hear from young people who went abroad, who are participating, and hear from their stories. This will be inspiring others that, oh yeah, that's for me too. Or what you said, like you brought your friends. So we need to get people who can then talk to others. So young people are like this peer-to-peer information is very powerful. And that's also one of the findings. And also the interesting and positive result from the survey is 90% of the young people surveyed said they would be willing to share their experiences and to encourage others to go on a mobility, because usually it's very beneficial, like from what we see, like it's really great in self-confidence and like, I don't know, opening up, etc. So it's very enriching, this experience. Yeah. And 30% said they were willing to follow up with doing an interview with us or sharing their stories on social media or whatever. So it's like there's a huge potential like for us to to work with young people directly and engage them in our information, because that's much more powerful. So I think that's a positive.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I think to think that people have such a positive experience that they go and tell their friends and their friends find out about it, that word of mouth is great. And I suppose it's that conversation, as I said, and like, it's something, when I hear these conversations happening, as I said, I'm always concerned about that bubble, and we spoke about it, and making sure those conversations take place in the places that they often don't. And people outside of Dublin or big cities or those bubbles get that same experience and the same opportunity. And I think it's good that we're having these conversations. I'm conscious I haven't taken a question from anybody other than myself. We've found out already this morning that the best questions aren't from me. So does anyone have a particular question for one of our panelists, or would you like to hear more of mine? Anybody? Yes.
One question for Emer and Audrey, I beg your pardon, and I know you practically answered my whole question. One of I have a group of young people who are 15 to 18 years of age that we work on a regular basis, and I met with them yesterday evening, told them we were coming here, and had they got anything to say to the people around the panel. And there was a lot of questions, but the one you haven't answered so far anyway, is that they reckon that the information, they're from a disadvantaged area and a disadvantaged educational system, but they're still willing and able and enthusiastic and want to be a European citizen and don't know how to go about it. So the question was, when information comes out, you know, we got our information from Largos, who are extremely helpful in everything we need, but everything else from Eurodesk and everything else is, they said, in their words, political jargon. It's English, we can read it, they don't understand it. Is there some way that the same information could come, and I know you're talking about working with the schools and the colleges, some of these are not going to get to college, they're going to get to the school they have, but they still want to participate in everything else. And at 15 to 18, when they are thinking about it, what you just said a second ago, we want to keep that seed and let it grow and not get a reach a brick wall that they can't get past and figure it out and not doing it. So is there any way we can?
I know we actually had, and it is a great question. I know you expressed not concern, but I suppose you were speaking about what you're doing with that to kind of get this information out in plain and simple language. Because you're right, like I'm often very confused when I read all these leaflets and booklets and see these things online. I'm trying to understand what the opportunity actually is behind all of the jargon and all of the phrases and things that just aren't used in common conversation. So,
you come and ask us the questions and we can explain it, but as one of the lads says, I want to go home tonight, open my computer and read it properly for themselves, because some of them take the information slower than others, and that's when it's not.
Yeah, basically, in Eurodesk we rely on the network, and also the use information points that our local multipliers. So the way we are structured, there's the European level, providing resources and templates for social media and things like that. And then the national level is supposed to translate. In the case of Ireland, it's a bit different because it's in English, but even though, I think Malgorzata sometimes translates our English from the bubble, let's say. But that's the role of the national level, to translate the information into something interesting or readable, by the different age groups. And then we have our local multipliers, so we have 1,600 local multipliers, and really rely on them to translate also this information into something meaningful in their community. So we don't expect everybody to take what is there at the European level. We provide the resources, but then we expect this translation to happen as much as possible. And to take the European Youth Portal, which is the main portal of information managed by the European Commission, in which Eurodesk is cooperating, it's a co-management. We implemented this pool of young journalists, and this is an idea we had from a long time, to involve young people in writing the content, because we felt it would be more interesting for young people to read what other young people think on what is happening in Europe. And we see it articles about mental health. They're proposing super interesting topics. So that's a way, a solution to this problem that you mentioned. That is, it's clear, how to communicate Europe is not easy. So bringing in young people, for me, it's one way. So, for example, for this pool of young journalists, now we are talking about with the Commission on to sustain the project in the long run and integrate it in the main information portal, and it seems that it will happen. So we are very happy about this. So that's one way. But I totally understand that the challenge is. It's clearly it's a very good question.
I know there's another question at that table as well.
It's not actually a question, just a quick bit of clarification. Our colleague Malgorzata, the yellow and purple kind of sign is for Eurodesk. So you can see there free information for young people and volunteering, studying, working and living in Europe. So our colleague couldn't be here today. She'd normally give a little input to kind of give an after the sign. So what we are is Eurodesk. We're part of Eurodesk, which is that very thing, making information kind of accessible. And as part of Eurodesk, we're also the youth information network in the country. And we have a couple of colleagues here from Kerry Diocesan Youth Services travelled up to be here with us today. And we're across there, and there's other actual Youth Work Ireland and stuff like that. So it's a huge national network of information that's out there. And the connection really is, we're very collaborative. We work with Europe Direct. We work with Eurace for jobs in Europe. We work with Erasmus Plus, so we're very kind of interagency orientated. So that's probably part of maybe some slight of seeing where everybody's connected together. So that's what's in the room, and we probably didn't get a chance to say that earlier. But they're the different services and how they kind of cooperate. And one of our roles is to make the information slightly more palatable, because it can be very dense and hard to wade through. Our other role would be to approach young people with fewer opportunities, such as the kind of groups that you were mentioning. And a lot of that's done through youth work, through NYCI, or kind of part of the umbrella organisation of NYCI as well. So it's really just finding the starting point, and then what can happen then is we signpost to the various other specialists depending on where people are at. So maybe just that's the connection of who we are in the room in the information centre next door. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thanks a million. Yeah, and as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm a Eurodesk ambassador. A very proud Eurodesk ambassador as well, and I know there's several other ambassadors in the room. You might just show hands for other Eurodesk ambassadors, not to put you on the spot. Yeah, there we go. So people to absolutely target at lunchtime for all of that information. Mazgaratska would be proud. Unfortunately, she couldn't be with us today, but we will try to fill those very big boots. I have one last question for everybody so that I finish on time and that we get into our World Cafe session, which I promise I would explain. The legacy for the European Year of Youth. It's a question for all of you. I might start with you, Emer, on this one. What do you hope the legacy for the European Year of Youth will be? And it doesn't look, it's not to be political, it could be a very personal thing based on your own experience. But I suppose I'm eager to hear what everyone is hopeful for, because as I said, we want this year to be a success, absolutely, but we want it to be a lasting success in the sense that young people, not just now but in the future, feel the impacts of it. So what do you hope the legacy will be?
Yeah, well, I suppose like yourself, you were saying there, it's the main thing is that young people know about these opportunities. Like, it's just, I didn't know about it either myself, like before I started working with VSI, doing the CSC. So, it's just that we want young people to know that these are out there and that they exist and that they can access them, that's the most important thing. So I suppose ultimately once young people find out about them and they realise that these opportunities exist, that's what I'd like to see out of it, because I know, like, I'm 29, so I'm at the very edge of where I could still do an ESC, so it would be great if I had have known about it a few years beforehand. But just that young people find out about it is my what I'd like to see happen.
Great. Marisa?
That's basically what I was going to say, because since I've done the European Solidarity Corps, I've gone on to tell my friends, so now 2 are actually doing European Solidarity Corps projects, but none of them had heard about it before. And I mean, I've known about it since it was the European Voluntary Service, so that was a long time ago. But at the time I was studying, and I knew that I wanted to do a long-term project, so I waited until, now. But yeah, I'd like to raise more awareness about it. And I checked the European Youth Portal, and it says that there's nearly 1,000 projects available. So there should be one for everyone in the audience. And yeah, I just hope that this year, I guess, highlights the amazing work that young people have been doing, particularly since the beginning of the pandemic, because, we're so resilient, we're innovators, and we're change makers. And this year is about all of us. So yeah, that's
fantastic. Dean?
I think the legacy I'd like to see is sort of breaking that mould for the young people that are participating. So I'd love to see more of the disadvantaged young people being at the forefront of these sorts of projects, and that all the political jargon is broken down completely, that whether your first day in it or your 100th day in sort of that European level of participation, you understand what's happening, and that the voices sitting on these sort of panels across Europe are those voices that aren't always heard.
Brilliant. Audrey?
Yeah, and on my part, I would like to see a change in cultures, because here we have young people on the panel, you have the Eurodesk ambassadors. I mean, so Ireland is kind of doing well, I think, but I would like to see those kind of practices all over Europe. So for me, it will be this change of how to involve young people in the youth information services, but in general, in services and in companies, I don't know, but to have a space for young people to share their opinions and views and like co-management and things like that. So, for example, well, we launched a guide that worked well in our network on greening our information services. So we want to use this model to develop a guide on how to be more inclusive in the way of including young people in the management of youth information. So that will be the result for us of this year. So we are starting now. So I saw some good practices around. So also don't hesitate to jump and bring me like, I don't know, whatever you have, because I will feature good practices in the guide. And we hope with this that it will bring like concrete tips and like how to do it concretely for the youth workers in Europe, so that all the countries can move on also in this in the long term, not just for the year of youth and just tick the box, but just like to have a change.
Brilliant. And Adam, we'll finish with you.
Yeah, so I suppose for a long-term impact, I hope to see more participatory democracy for young people at a European level and even at a national level as well. Like we've seen, a lot of things are happening this year. It's the European Year of Youth, and there's also the Conference on the Future of Europe, which is this big project of renewing participatory democracy in Europe. But I think this idea can go on much longer. I know with NYCI, I've been involved in the youth strategy, I forget the name of it, conference in the future, or the youth conference, European Youth Conference. But that's, I suppose, it's one aspect of participatory democracy. I want to see something that's more impactful to everyone, that all young people can get involved in, not just a select few, and it kind of brings it to the forefront of all young people, that they can actively involve in their own decision making, and that Europe can empower young people and youth-led organizations such as like the ISSU, which I'm also involved in. That's like something that's completely youth-led, that represents young people at a national level. So I hope to see more of that in the next coming years, that this will leave an impact on those organizations and empower them to grow and develop more.
Fantastic. Thank you so much all for your time. It's been a really interesting conversation. I personally have found it fascinating, and I said I'm definitely signing up for ESC after this. Can you please all give a huge round of applause for Emer, Marisa, Dean, Audrey and Adam.